The war between Ukraine and Russia has taken on a new global dimension with the arrival of North Korean soldiers in frontline Russian war camps. The Pentagon says there are 10,000 North Korean troops in Russia's Kursk Oblast. The Pentagon press secretary said that if these troops enter the conflict, they would be legitimate targets for Ukrainian troops. But this may not be necessary. What would be your reaction if we told you that these North Korean troops are firing on Russian troops that they refuse to fight? Yes, this is a fact. A soldier of Kremlin leader Vladimr Putin has admitted that North Korean soldiers who were deployed for Russia on the Ukrainian front lines and in the Kursk Oblast opened fire on Russian forces. Before we go into all the details of this stunning news, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like our channel to be informed about our content. Let's discover together how the North Korean soldiers sent to war foiled the joint plan of Putin and Kim Jong-Un. First of all, the confessions of a Russian soldier dropped like a bombshell. This Russian soldier said that North Korean soldiers deployed to fight against Ukraine had endangered their own troops by firing in the wrong direction. The allegations in a clip shared on social media came after Kiev said that the first North Korean troops deployed in the Kursk region of Russia came under fire. Video footage shared by a Ukraine-based X account, Victoria, showed a captured Russian soldier describing to the camera his experiences with North Korean soldiers who had just joined the Moscow cause. The soldier said that members of his unit and 10 North Korean soldiers were brought into the forest to dig trenches and were given all warm clothes and food. These North Korean soldiers were then sent to the battlefield and allegedly combed through the entire Russian military unit, including the confessing Russian soldier. The confessed Russian soldier said that they told the North Korean soldiers what to aim at, but the Pyongyang forces shot 2 of Putin's soldiers. The confessing soldier said that after seeing this situation, he fled towards the Ukrainian forces, emphasizing that it was a wiser idea to surrender than to continue to be there. The Russian soldier who recounted all of this gave the impression that the North Koreans regarded the Kremlin's firing on their troops as friendly fire. Perhaps Kim Jong's soldiers were protesting by firing on Russian forces rather than being on the front lines of Putin's war effort. Another possibility is that North Korean soldiers accidentally opened fire on Russian troops. But given that North Korean soldiers are also wearing Russian uniforms, there is no way that these soldiers could not distinguish who they were supposed to be targeting. So it seems highly unlikely that North Korean soldiers accidentally opened fire on Russian forces. In this case, we are probably waiting for a big problem between Kim Jong and Vladimir Putin. On the other hand, North Korean soldiers firing at Russian forces is not the only problem that is likely to arise between these two. Retired British Army Colonel Hamish Stephen de Breton Gordon reports that North Korean soldiers who went to war for Russia have abandoned their posts, particularly on the Kursk front. The colonel believes that North Korean soldiers fled because they could not withstand the harsh conditions of the war and did not recognize the cooperation between Putin and Kim. This is described as a second crisis in the North Korea-Russia alliance. These unimaginable scandals could lead to Kim Jong's humiliation vis-à-vis Putin. Before all this unfolded, military sources close to both North Korea and Russia, including military analysts, predicted that the tens of thousands of troops sent by Pyongyang could change the war. Initially, North Korea's participation appeared to be on a relatively large scale, with estimates suggesting that a total of 10,000 to 12,000 North Korean soldiers were expected to join the Russian forces over time. These numbers were expected to include 500 officers and 3 generals, adding further weight to this contribution. However, the arrival of North Korean troops was likely being carried out in stages, a phased approach designed to gradually integrate them into wider operations. But these anticipated dynamics were shattered when both North Korean troops opened fire on Russian forces, and Kim Jong's most trusted troops fled the front lines. It has been claimed that commanders within the Russian army will now be more responsible for training North Korean troops in order to put an end to this disorganization and imbalances. This phased deployment allows Russian commanders to closely monitor the performance of these new troops on the front lines and make adjustments based on how effectively they adapt to the unique challenges of the Ukrainian battlefield. Russian commanders, in turn, use these opportunities to make the North Korean soldiers more disciplined. Such a gradual process is likely intended to help Russian forces manage logistics more effectively and distribute the operational burden over time, rather than bringing in all these troops at once. By gradually integrating North Korean forces, Russia wants to gain the flexibility to test their capabilities under real combat conditions and determine the most effective ways to use them as the situation on the ground continues to change. But as we mentioned, the results so far suggest that it is unlikely that Russia will be able to bring North Korean troops to this stage, and that it will be very difficult. So why do North Korean troops find it difficult to get to a position that Russia wants? And why do they prefer to flee the front lines by firing at troops on their side? To answer this question, it is worth looking at the difficulties that North Korean soldiers face after being sent to the front lines. One of the biggest challenges facing North Korean soldiers in Ukraine is the unfamiliar terrain and climate they face, which is significantly different from the environments in which they trained. North Korean military training is heavily focused on operations in mountainous regions where conditions and tactics are very different from the flat and temperate landscape of Ukraine. This disparity means that much of their training is not directly applied to the demands of the Ukrainian front. In addition, any additional preparation these troops received from Russian forces was likely basic and relatively brief, given the rapid pace of their deployment. This minimal training means that North Korean troops may struggle to keep pace with the combat effectiveness of Russian forces, which are both more experienced and better prepared for these particular circumstances. Combat experts suggest that these limitations could potentially lead to even higher casualties among North Korean units than Russian troops have so far experienced, given the lack of alignment between their training and the realities of the battlefield. If Pyongyang continues to provide Moscow with additional troops for the duration of the war, despite the inability of North Korean soldiers to acclimatize to the battlefield and their difficulties in doing so, then Kim Jong-un's move could pose a significant problem. That is, if North Korea continues to send additional waves of troops to reinforce Russian positions, this gradual influx of manpower, especially if sustained over a long period of time, could eventually have the effect of breaking Ukraine's resilience throughout the war. At this stage, however, the presence of North Korean troops on the front line alone is unlikely to significantly alter the balance of power. While the participation of North Korean troops may not tip the scales immediately, their increased presence could add to the cumulative pressure on Ukrainian forces over time and help Russia gradually advance its regional and operational objectives. This phased deployment strategy could allow Russian commanders to assess and adjust their approach to incorporating North Korean troops as they adapt and test their combat effectiveness in real-world conditions. The timing of Russian advances, on the other hand, is intricately tied to seasonal changes that play a tactical role in the unfolding situation. Autumn rains in Ukraine create significant challenges for mobility and logistics, making it difficult to move equipment and maintain supply lines. North Korean troops could serve as Russia's new cannon fodder under these difficult seasonal conditions. However, if Russian forces secure strategic areas like Andrivka before the rains begin, they will have the opportunity to bring in heavier equipment to reinforce their positions and consolidate their gains on the ground. This will allow them to consolidate their positions in areas where they have recently advanced. In other words, Russia could, on the one hand, transfer heavy military equipment to the front lines, and, on the other hand, use North Korean soldiers sent by Kim Jong-Un to distract the Ukrainians and carry out so-called military operation breakthroughs on the front lines. While the Ukrainian armed forces are dealing with the North Korean troops, the Kremlin can deploy its most strategic and most trusted military equipment to the battlefields in a risk-free manner. Thus, while North Korean troops attack the front lines as a distraction, Russian forces will secure the main roads and supply lines, disrupting Ukrainian defensive networks that rely on these routes to organize reinforcements and supplies. This trap could pave the way for deeper penetration of Russian troops into Ukrainian-held territory. For its part, the Kremlin expects more from North Korean troops than just fighting on the front lines. This military cooperation seems to go beyond simply providing troop support. Reports indicate that North Korean experts are also involved in the production of drones and related technologies at Russian facilities. This cooperation in drone production points to a burgeoning technological exchange between the two countries that could boost Russia's drone capabilities, which are becoming an increasingly important component in modern warfare. Of course, there is also the arms supply relationship between the two countries. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently revealed that North Korea has supplied more than 3 million artillery shells and missiles to Russia. This massive flow of weapons adds a new dimension to the munition supply dynamics of the war and points to North Korea's crucial role in supporting Russia's ongoing campaign. Beyond simply providing supplies, North Korea's expertise in munitions production may be directly aiding Russian forces. North Korean technicians are likely to contribute to the production and maintenance of Russia's artillery and missile systems, strengthening Russia's munition supply chain. This significant support from North Korea signals a deeper involvement in sustaining Russia's expanded military efforts. So, looking at all these reciprocal activities, the integration of North Korean forces and resources into Russia's military operations adds a new layer to the international aspects of this war. North Korea's participation in the war not only sends a clear signal of alignment with Russia's goals, but also highlights the increasingly complex alliances that have emerged in response to the Ukrainian war. By stepping further into this conflict, both through military intervention and industrial support, North Korea is moving away from its traditionally isolated stance on global affairs. This relationship benefits both sides in different ways. For Russia, North Korean troops offer additional manpower at a crucial time when maintaining the strength of its frontline forces is vital. For North Korea, the alliance provides an opportunity to gain real combat experience that its military has not faced for several generations. The insights and tactics that North Korean forces developed from their participation in Ukraine can eventually be applied within their own military framework, potentially reshaping North Korea's doctrines and capabilities in the future. Pyongyang could consider using these experienced soldiers in a potential war against South Korea in the Pacific. More than experience, one of North Korea's advantages is, of course, weapons technology from Russia. Most recently, a critical assessment came from South Korea on this issue. South Korean Defense Minister Kim Jong-Un said at the Pentagon that North Korea is very likely to demand advanced nuclear weapons technology from Moscow in exchange for sending troops to Russia in its war against Ukraine. Kim Jong-un, speaking through an interpreter with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, said North Korea would likely seek technology transfer from Russia for tactical nuclear weapons, the development of North Korean intercontinental ballistic missiles, reconnaissance satellites, and nuclear submarines. Kim said he did not believe that North Korea's deployment of troops to help Russia would increase the likelihood of war on the Korean peninsula, but that it could lead to an escalation of security threats on the Korean peninsula. South Korea has been on alert for weeks about North Korea's troop deployment to Russia and has been providing NATO allies with intelligence on troop movements. Experts suspect that North Korea could use military technology from Russia to take more threatening actions in the Pacific. For this reason, South Korea is believed to have significantly increased intelligence sharing with the alliance in recent weeks. Most recently, Defense Minister Kim did not give a direct answer when asked whether South Korea would start providing military assistance to the Ukrainians against the North Koreans. This contradicted the South Koreans' long-standing policy of not arming countries at war. But it is thought that South Korean military analysts could be deployed to observe North Koreans fighting on the front lines for the Russians and learn more about North Korea's military readiness. It is also noteworthy that the Seoul government will equip Kiev's army from top to bottom with lethal weapons. Seoul does not want Pyongyang to become more militarily repressive. Therefore, the South Korean government aims to prevent North Korea from sending more troops to the battlefield for Russia by providing significant military support to Ukraine. In the long run, South Korea's military assistance to Ukraine could discourage North Korea's troops, who currently do not want to fight and are shooting at Russian forces, from being on the front lines. This would be a real humiliation for Kim Jong-Un and Vladimir Putin on the global stage against all other countries. Thank you for following us.